So let's talk about longevity. I think out of all the factors to consider when I'm testing out a fragrance, for me personally, longevity and performance isn't something that I put high on my list of priorities. I definitely look more forward to what a fragrance smells like on me. And longevity is something that kind of comes secondary to that. If maybe not even secondary, but lower on my list. But I do think it is important to consider longevity and performance when you are spending a lot of money on a bottle. I think if a fragrance costs hundreds of dollars and it's only going to last 2 hours on my skin, not worth the money in my opinion. But I did want to talk about this topic because I think when reviewers, including myself, when we talk about how long a fragrance lasts, I think as viewers, we kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. There are lots of things to consider, lots of factors to consider when someone is talking about how a perfume behaves on their skin and how long that they last. I wanted to bring up two things that I think might impact our perception on whether or not a fragrance lasts a long time on our skin. So one is, if a fragrance doesn't seem to be on our skin anymore, like we can't really detect it, I have a feeling that sometimes it's due to us getting nose blind to it. And this was something I realized later on in my perfume journey. After I started living with my husband, he is able to give me input on whether or not he can smell a fragrance. I've found that certain fragrances, especially when it's super strong, and oftentimes when I overspray, my nose gets really fatigued from it and I have a hard time detecting it after several hours. And even though I can't detect it, my husband can. So I think that's a factor that we have to think about when we are considering whether or not something lasts on us. So an example of that is one of my favorites actually, Eau de Merveilles from Hermès. And I love this fragrance. This has quite a bit of ambroxan in it, and I notice when I overspray this, as well as other fragrances that has a lot of that aroma chemical, I have a hard time detecting it after some time. Sometimes I'll get wafts of it from time to time when I forget about it, but I am careful when wearing these fragrances because usually when I just do 1 or 2 sprays, even if it doesn't project as much, I can smell it for a longer period of time on myself. And my husband can definitely detect it after some time. Another example is this one actually, Tempo. This is my husband's, and sometimes he can't smell it on himself after some time, but I can definitely smell it on him very strongly after 10 hours. I will talk more about this fragrance in a more in-depth review, but what I will say right now is that when my husband wears this, it is very strong. It leaves a really strong sillage, a really nice trail. And even though he can't detect it sometimes, I definitely smell it and everyone else can smell it on him. So this fragrance has been talked about in other reviews, and something I've noticed is that a lot more reviewers than not say that this doesn't last very long. And I always thought that was strange to me because I definitely detect it after some time. In fact, when my husband sprays it on himself and a little bit gets on his clothing, after we do the laundry, I could still smell hints of this fragrance after it's been washed. So, you know, I think, again, we just have to take it with a grain of salt when certain reviews say that something doesn't last very long. Now, sometimes it might not be because of nose blindness. I think legitimately there are times when a fragrance does not last on us. One example is this one, Tea for Two from Dr. Parfumeur. And this is quite a smoky fragrance on me, especially at the beginning. And usually with smoky fragrances, those usually cling on to me for a long time. But I have noticed this only lasts 4 to 6 hours on my skin. And my husband is also unable to detect it on me. So I don't think this is a matter of being nose blind to it. However, I do want to bring up that the way that a fragrance performs on us can be dependent on many different factors. I think it can change from one person to the next. This fragrance might actually last a long time on some of you guys, but on me, it just doesn't. It could be because of how my skin is. It could be also the climate that I'm in. Maybe people who live in more humid places might get different experiences with longevity. But also, I think it also is dependent on how we define longevity. Some people might say that a fragrance doesn't last long when they're really expecting those opening notes to last a long time. It's projecting a lot. Others might define longevity as being the time that it lasts from when they spray it up to when they absolutely cannot smell it any longer. So I think that's another factor to kind of think about when we are reading reviews or when we are watching reviews. Luckily for me, I'm very fortunate that most fragrances tend to last a long time on me. And maybe that's why I don't really focus too much on longevity. For some, maybe fragrances typically last a couple hours on you. For me, on my skin, I can easily get at least 8 hours for most of the fragrances I own. And again, it's due to different factors. Maybe it's because I moisturize and exfoliate my skin regularly. It could be my climate that I'm living in. So I wanted to talk about this because I think there is an overemphasis on longevity, and we kind of see it as this objective thing, that it's absolutely going to last this long depending on this review. And it's going to be the same experience that each of us will get when we try out the same fragrance. And I don't think that's true. And I'm doing this more of a reminder for myself that when I do reviews, I do talk about longevity and performance, and I think I have to kind of rethink how I present that information, because it is a very individual and subjective experience. And again, it might not even be the longevity. It could be just me being nose blind to it after some time. So I hope that this might help anyone watching this to kind of remember that when they are reading and watching reviews. And as a reviewer, I want to be more careful about presenting that information. And I hope that if you're watching a review or reading something and you seem to like how it sounds like, and it seems like a fragrance that will fit your taste, I hope that any points around longevity might not deter you from trying it out. So try it out if it's something you like, if it's something that interests you. It might be different from you compared to the person who's reviewing it. So that's all I wanted to say. I know I just pretty much said a whole bunch of nothing, but it's been something I was thinking about. And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts about this too. So leave a comment down below. Let me know about your thoughts when it comes to longevity. Maybe it is something that's important to you. And as I mentioned, it makes sense when you're spending a lot of money on a fragrance. So that's all I'll say for today. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.